Hey, welcome to episode 30 of the Courageous Nation podcast. So glad that you're joining us today. Today is a milestone in the history of this podcast. We begin to do the podcast with video. From this point forward, you'll be able to enjoy them not only on iTunes and Spotify, but also on our YouTube channel, which is at Michael Anthony Official. So make sure you check us out over on YouTube. And if you're watching, subscribe. And make sure you post comments too, because I love to interact, whether it's through the Courageous Nation, through texting, or whether it's through video. I love to interact to help you take your next steps and to move forward like never before. My name is Michael Anthony. I'm your host for the Courageous Nation podcast, and you can learn more about me at couragematters.com and Michael Anthony Official. But this broadcast is all about you. It's all about helping you move forward as quickly as possible and as consistently as possible. It is about your forward momentum. Today is part 3 of a micro-series that I'm doing on the importance of vision trips. Now, you want to make sure that you get the first and the second part. This is part 3, where we're going to look at particular questions that you'll be able to ask yourself, strategic questions, right? It's all about, in life, asking the right questions. If you don't ask the right questions, the answers that you get may not be the significant answers that you need in order to move forward. Remember, your whole life is about unleashing your potential, making the most of your life. The Bible says in Ephesians chapter 5, verses 15 and 16, make the most use or the best use of the time because the days are evil. Now, that was written 2,000 years ago. If we don't recognize that what's happening in the world today is more evil than it's ever been, then we're not paying attention. But the good news is that you can learn how to make the most use of your time, because the way you make the most use of your time is to make the most use, the best use of your life. And you only have one this side of forever. So today we want to look at this idea of vision trips. Hopefully you listened to episode 28 and episode 29. And this one, what we want to do is help you understand some specific questions that you can ask. And before we get there, before we get into those particular questions, I want you to understand that when you go away for a vision trip, this idea of planning your vision trips can seem like it's monumental. It can seem like, well, I don't even know where to start. Well, think about it this way. Just break it down. There are 4 seasons in the year. There's summer, fall, winter, and spring, right? 4 seasons of the year. So when you sit down to plan your life in the 7 major areas of life that you've heard me talking about, and when you're strategizing, when you're setting those goals for the next 3 to 5, 10, 20, 30 years or so, depending on where you are in your goal-crushing journey, your goal achievement journey, what you want to be able to do is think about, first and foremost, when am I going to go away this coming year for my vision trip? And it's much easier to plan and to strategize if you look at the 4 seasons of the year and you think, well, do I want to do it during the summer? Do I want to do it during the fall? Do I want to do it during the winter? Or maybe during the spring? So that's the first thing, is to determine when you're going to do your vision trip. And then you set the date and you go for it. You go for it. You get away for your vision trip. 1 overnight, 2 overnights will be fantastic, however you can. And by the way, I didn't mention this before, but I bet you could probably house or apartment swap with a friend of yours or a family of yours, where maybe when they're away, you could go over to their place and use their place for a night or two to do your vision trip. So if you're strapped financially, that's a great thing that you can do to help each other out, right? To help each other out, especially if you're experiencing economic hardship. So if you can't afford to go away for a hotel or a particular stay where you got to shell out money, you can ask a friend of yours or family of yours, and you can say, hey, when you're away, could I come over for a night or two to cast some vision for my life? Remember, you've got to invest in your own life. Your investment in your own life is the most important thing that you can do with any resource that you have. You are the most important resource that God has given you. So steward yourself. Make the most use of the only life you're going to have, and one of the primary ways you do that is with your vision trip. Now, you're away on your vision trip, and you want to be able to ask some questions of yourself strategic questions. Life is all about asking the right questions in order to get the maximum impact. So a vision trip is all about future you. It's all about future you. So the first thing you can ask yourself, we're going to take this from the big picture, the higher level, and we're going to bring it down. We're going to land the plane, and we're going to walk through the 7 areas of life with specific questions to get your juices flowing, your creative juices flowing, so that you can maximize your life. You want to think about this. If my life does not change, if the momentum I have in my life, the depth that I have in my life, the decisions that I'm making in my life, the results that I'm getting as a result of living the way I am, the impact that I'm experiencing, if nothing changes, will that be a good thing or a bad thing 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years, 30 years from now? Think about your finances, how you're using your money, how you're stewarding the money that God's given you. Where's that going to lead you 10, 20, 30, 40, maybe 50 years from now? Where's that going to lead you? And you might say to yourself, well, I wish you were around a while ago because I could have used you then. I don't have 20, 30, 40, 50 years left anymore. But today is a great day to steward what God has given you for the greatest ROI, return on investment. It's always in fashion to turn over a new leaf and to go in the right direction, the best direction, because the alternative, it's not very good, is it? It's not very good at all. So I want you to think about where you're going to be. Is it going to be good for you in the next 3, 5, 10, 20 years if nothing changes? Now, it's really easy to ask yes and no type of questions, but what I want you to do is to use a 1 to 10 scale. When you use a 1 to 10 scale in life, that's how you really get into the minutia. Like if you want to evaluate your relationship with somebody, maybe it's your spouse or your girlfriend or your boyfriend, if you ask them, hey, are you happy with our relationship? They might say, yes, I'm happy with our relationship. But if you ask them on a 1 to 10 scale, how would you rate our relationship in regard to how happy you are, how fulfilled you are? 1 meaning I'm not fulfilled and happy at all. 10 meaning I couldn't be happier, I couldn't be more fulfilled. That's when you begin to get the degrees of change and the opportunity for improvement, because your yes might be different than your spouse's yes, different than that significant other's yes, and same thing with a no. But if you ask on a 1 to 10 scale, your yes might be a 7, their yes might be a 9, or vice versa. And you might say to yourself, you might be surprised if you ask your significant other to rate your relationship, you might be surprised at the answer they give you. And it takes things from just being okay with a yes or a no, which is either hot or cold, to the opportunity now, how can we improve? How can we make adjustments? How can we make improvements? So evaluate yourself, ask yourself that in that regard, just in a general way for your whole life. If my life continues as it continues for the next 3, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, from a 1 to 10 scale, where am I going to be? That helps you get very specific. And then you're going to do the same thing in the 7 areas of life that you hear me talking about again and again. The 7 areas are this: relationships, spiritual life, health and fitness, finances, career, education, and rest and recreation. Any goal that you want to set in life is going to be centered in one of those 7 areas of life. It's going to have overflow into the other areas of life, of course, because they're interdependent of each other. But there's going to be a ground zero. There's going to be that impact location, that bullseye, and that's what the 7 areas of life help you do. They help you identify, they help you take things from a general nebulous way to get very specific. And accountability in your own life is really, really important. If you're not tough on yourself, life is going to be tough on you. So the harder you are on yourself, the easier life is going to go for you. And don't you want your life to be as easy as possible? And what I mean is to reduce the kind of friction, to reduce the kind of problems and difficulties that you might create in your own life, even if unintentional. Many times we create problems for ourselves that we don't intend to create, but we create them because we don't think ahead, we don't plan ahead, and we don't ask the right questions. So Think about these 7 areas of life: relationships, your spiritual life, your health and fitness, your finances, your career, your education, and your rest and recreation. These are the 7 areas of life. So evaluate yourself on a 1 to 10 scale in each one of those. If things continue in my relationships as they are, if things continue in my spiritual life as it is, in my finances, in my career, in my education, in my rest and recreation. We don't often think about rest and recreation, do we? But you need to play when you play, work when you work, rest when you rest. And if you use a 1 to 10 scale, that helps you understand very quickly. It helps you very quickly understand. You put your finger on it and say, this is an area of my life where I need some work. And with that is the second kind of a question you can ask. This question: am I in any way imbalanced? Am I in any way imbalanced? Because you want to achieve a healthy balance in these 7 areas of life. So a person can be crushing it in regard to their finances. They can be doing a great job. Maybe they're into sales, maybe they're into real estate or investing, whatever the case might be. They might just be off the charts, off the hook, as we say down south, right? They might be off the charts in regard to what they're doing with their finances, but their relationships could be suffering miserably. Their health and their fitness could be suffering miserably. Their spiritual life could be in the tank, in the hopper. They could be suffering miserably. Their rest and their recreation could be suffering miserably. Have you ever been around somebody that, even though they're there physically, the Bible says to be absent in the body is to be in the presence of the Lord when we're physically dead. To be absent in the body is to be in the presence of the Lord. There are people who are present in the body, but they're absent. They're AWOL. They're not really paying attention relationally and emotionally. And the intimacy that they have, emotional intimacy they have with other people, the ability to connect, is lacking. And that's a sign of imbalance. So you want to ask yourself, am I in any way imbalanced? Which of these areas would I say that I'm the strongest in? Which would you say you're strongest in of those 7 areas of life? Which would you say is the strongest area? Which would you say is the weakest area? And then rate each one of them on a 1 to 10 scale. That's going to immediately help you begin to recognize, what do I need to tune up? What do I need to strengthen? What do I need to improve upon? Does that make sense? Does that make sense? I hope it does, because that's the purpose of asking these kinds of questions. And it's all about future you. It's all about future you. If you think about future you now, and if you plan and if you cast good vision in each of the 7 areas of your life, by simply envisioning yourself into the future, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, that's what's going to help you get your life in shape and get it prioritized the way it needs to be. Now, this is not the podcast for milquetoast. This is not the podcast to help you feel good if you need a healthy kick in the butt. I'm going to lovingly kick you in the butt when you need to be kicked in the butt. And Christians are absolutely terrible. I'm a Christian. I'm giving this podcast from a Christian perspective. You may not be. I'm not going to hold that against you, but hopefully you'll be able to respect what I'm saying here. There are too many Christians who are overweight. Their finances are out of whack. Their relationships are terrible. Their career is just a shambles. They don't know how to rest and recreate. They're not committed to their own education, and all they're really doing is holding out for a divine bailout. They're waiting for the rapture to get them out of here. That is a very unhealthy perspective, to just drop back and punt and to say that it's up to God to do what God has told you to do. Christians should be the most effective people on planet Earth when it comes to glorifying God in those 7 areas of life. You should be crushing it. This idea of a personal accountability, standing before God and giving an account for the things that we've done in the body, whether good or bad, that's totally, thoroughly biblical. And that's what it means to make the most use of the time, because the days are evil. You're going to be held accountable, whether you believe it or not. It's true. You're going to be held accountable for what you're doing in each of the 7 areas of your life. So you need to project yourself into the future and say, if things don't change, is that going to be a good thing for me or not such a good thing for me? Okay, very important to ask. What if you continue in your current state? Are you imbalanced? Then I want you to think about this. Who are 2, maybe 3 or 4 people? You only need maybe 1, 2, 3 or 4. It would be great if you could find 2 people. 3, 4 at the max. You don't need more than that. Who would be committed to helping you become that best version of yourself in each of these 7 areas. That doesn't mean that they need to know all the minutia of your goals. They don't need to know the minutia of your vision, but they're going to be cheerleaders for you, to be pulling for you and encouraging you and nurturing you to become that best version of yourself in your relationships, in your spiritual life, in your health and your fitness, in your finances, in your career, in your education, and your rest and recreation. Ask yourself, who are the people in my life? Think about your immediate family. Think about your extended family. Think about your friends. Maybe you have a best friend. Maybe you have somebody who can become a best friend. You need to just get a little bit of the dust off of that relationship and pour into it a little bit. And somebody who might be just latent there, might be a diamond in the rough, they could end up becoming a fantastic friendship for you. Maybe it's somebody that you don't know very well, but maybe that's somebody that you can invest in. They can invest in you, and that could be a tremendous relationship that could help you on your journey. Remember, if you try to go things alone, it's very lonely, and it's much more difficult if you try to go things alone. So you probably know 1, 2, 3, or 4 people that can help you in your journey of crushing it and unleashing your potential. You always hear me talking about that. It is about you unleashing your potential. And instead of being lazy, instead of throwing back things onto God's lap that He's entrusted to you, you need to be responsible with your life in the 7 areas of life and just crush it and really be intentional. If you want to move forward in your life, you've got to be somebody who's intentional. So these are the kinds of questions that you can ask. So think about immediate family, extended family, your coworkers, your neighbors, your friends, and how they can help you. Think about a couple of them who could help you. Just approach them and ask them, hey, would you be interested in helping me, not nagging me? That's always very important to help people understand. Don't nag me. But when you catch me doing something good, bring that to my attention, right? Because what gets praised gets repeated. That's very important to understand. And help me, and I'll help you as well. Now, another thing that you can do when you're away, another question that you can ask and that you can kick around here on your vision trip is, what does your ideal friend look like? What does your ideal friend look like? And I don't mean necessarily physically, visually what they look like. I mean, what are the character traits of your ideal friend? And you'd be amazed how many people do not think about this. And it's a huge thing to comprehend, because if you don't have a clear picture of what your best friend looks like, then how are you going to know that person when they come your way? And how are you going to encourage them and nurture them to become that best friend of yours? Does that make sense? And you do attract in life. You might think this is bizarre, but it's not bizarre. Luke chapter 6, give and it'll be given to you. A good measure, pressed down and overflowing, it will be given to you. Because with the measure that you give or that you use, it will be given back to you. And most people take that out of context. We've heard preachers on television, even live in churches, that context is always taken, that scripture is always taken out of context, or I should say often taken out of context, and hijacked and used to approach money. People say, well, if you give financially, it's going to be given back to you. But the context of Luke chapter 6 is relationships. Jesus is talking about relationships. So when you think about your ideal friend, you should think about what's their character like, what's their reliability like, how about their punctuality, how about their sense of humor, their verbal way that they express themselves, and write out for yourself what is your best friend. Just take the lids off of it. What are the characteristics of your best friend? What does your best friend look like? What would that person look like if they came your way? And who has potential in your life? Who might be a diamond in the rough? You know, a lump of coal becomes a diamond under pressure. It's not valuable when it's a lump of coal, but through the course of time, the pressure and the difficulty, the coal becomes a diamond. So you might know somebody in your life who's not there right now, but they'd have some potential of becoming that best friend. And many people have not even sat down and thought about, and this is one of the things that you should do, that you can do in the course of your vision trip. Write out the characteristics of your ideal friend. What does your ideal friend look like? How do they act? What kinds of things, if you could just take the limit off it all and design your ideal friend Write it out. Write down what they're like, how they treat you, how they interact, what do they value in life, what's their family like if they have a family, how do they spend their time, what kind of hobbies do they have, what kinds of traits does your ideal friend have. Give, and it will be given to you. And then think for yourself, what do you want to be known for in the lives of other people? What are the traits that are important for you to develop in order to give selflessly in the lives of other people? So you map out the ideal traits of your ideal friend and the ideal traits of yourself. And just by writing these things out, you help yourself dramatically move from where you are to where you want to be, and from what you have to what you can have. Give, and it will be given to you, a good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and overflowing. For with the measure that you give, it will be given to you. What goes around does come around, but you have to be intentional in this regard, in regard to designing your ideal friend and what those traits are. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? I hope that helps you. So design your ideal friend. And then you also want to think about, on your vision trip, is there anybody that you need to forgive? You ask yourself, you ask God, is there anybody that I need to forgive? And forgiveness is really, really important in life, because if you don't forgive, you will not be able to forget. And if you don't forgive and you don't forget, you're going to get stuck in regret without even realizing it. Somebody said it this way: bitterness is like taking poison and expecting the other person to die. That's what unforgiveness is like. I don't know if you've ever really thought about that, but life is too short to hold on to grudges and to become bitter. In fact, the Bible says in the book of Hebrews, see to it that no bitter root grows up among you and defiles many. That root of bitterness produces a fruit of broken relationships and hardships in your interactions with other people. So typically this doesn't take a whole lot of time for things to come to your remembrance and to come to your forefront. It really doesn't. Ask yourself, ask God, is there anybody I need to forgive? And then you begin the process of forgiving. And sometimes, depending on the depth of the hurt, the depth of the damage that has been done, that has caused that woundedness in you, you may need to ask God to help you to forgive that person repeatedly. And I've had to do this in my own life. I know other people have had to do it. And listen, God will do his part. You just need to do your part. If you will ask God for the help, God is a forgiving God. He knows how to forgive. When Jesus hung on the cross, one of his dying phrases was, "Forgive them, Father. They don't know what they're doing." That is somebody who's an expert in giving, an expert in forgiving. So if you ask God and you're persistent, begin that journey of forgiveness, okay? And then the other thing you want to do is you want to think about sages, sojourners, and students. Sages, sojourners, and students. These are the three kinds of people that you're going to need in your life in order for you to crush it and to unleash your potential. A sage is somebody who's an expert in an area of life where you don't have the expertise. They've got a track record of success in that area. Now, here's where people make a mistake. They think that they've got to find somebody who's got their whole act together. That kind of a person today is harder and harder to come by. What you want is somebody who is a sage in each of the particular 7 areas of life. Maybe you know somebody who just does a fantastic job relationally. They know how to talk with people. They have no lack of friends. They have people contacting them, and they're contacting them back. That person would be considered a sage, somebody whom you respect, who's got success in that particular area of life where you want to grow and you want to develop. Think about somebody in their spiritual life. Maybe they know the Bible really well. Maybe they know how to put the Bible into practice. Remember, that's the kind of a spiritual sage that you want. Not somebody who simply knows the Bible, somebody who's putting the Bible into practice. Think about health and fitness. We all know people who are just crushing it in regard to their physical stamina, their low body fat content, the foods that they eat, and the nutrition that they get in their bodies. Think about somebody who could be a sage in your life in that regard. Your finances. We know people who are doing a really good job in their finances. And this goes right down the line. Their career, people who love their job. They love what they're doing and what they're getting paid to do. Life is too short to just get a paycheck. You should be getting a paycheck for doing the things that you love. So think about your career. Think about education. Somebody who's doing a really good job of educating themselves, either through formal education or informal education, as we talked about in episode 29. And rest and recreation. We know people who are really good at keeping a particular day out of the week where they rest. They do a really good job. They take great vacations. You can learn from somebody like that. And here's what you do. You identify. See how when you break it into the 7 areas of life and you think about it this way, the light bulbs begin to turn on. This is how you take it from the stratosphere and you land it onto the runway and you move forward. Think about each of these 7 areas of life and a particular sage, somebody who you can learn from, and call them up, text them, get together with them and say, hey, would you be willing to take an hour with me? Let's go get a cup of coffee. Let's go get a cup of coffee and share with me what you know in this particular area that's helped you succeed. And would you be willing to help me succeed in that particular area? Most people can do a cup of coffee. Most people can do that. And by the way, you're paying anyway, so it's a free cup of coffee for them. Most people can grow and develop, and they can commit to doing that. And if that goes really well, and you learned and you grew and you have more that you want to learn from them, you can ask them again for another cup of coffee or for lunch or whatever, and they can build into you, and that's how you develop that relationship with the sage. Okay, so a sage is somebody who is further along in a particular of those 7 areas of life that you can learn from, that you approach, you're proactive in your approach, and you ask them, hey, would you be willing to help me in this particular area of life for a short period of time, like a cup of coffee? That's something that somebody can do. Then there's this idea of sojourners. A sojourner is somebody who's equal to you, pretty much equal to you, and you want to come alongside of them, and you want to ask them if they would come alongside of you, spend some time with you to help you grow in that regard as well. Now, here's what's going to happen with the course of time. You can surpass a sojourner, they can surpass you, and you might not be equals for very long if you're doing it right, and they're not doing their part. If they're doing their part, then you can grow together, and that sojournership, that traveling together, that mutual encouragement can be something that grows and becomes years and even decades until one of you is not in the picture anymore. So a sojourner, different than a sage, somebody who's about an equal. You need that kind of a person, a running partner, and you should look at your significant other, your spouse, as the number one person that you can do that with. And you say, well, my spouse, there's no way, they're not even close to being that. Again, remember the diamond in the rough idea. They might not be there now, but if you cast this kind of vision, help them watch this episode. Help them understand the importance of time management, because time management is life management. Life management is who you are. It comes down to who you are. And who knows, you might encourage them. You might take somebody who's on the fence, somebody who's kind of lukewarm, and you might fire them up. So you need sages, you need sojourners, and then students. This is where you become a sage for somebody who's not at that particular place that you are in each of those or one of those 7 areas of life. You don't have to have everything down and be perfect, but this is where you get the opportunity to help them and to nurture them and to encourage them. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. So sages, sojourners, and students, those are the 3 kinds of people. You either are one or you need one, at least one in your life to help you move forward. I hope that's helped you in regard to your vision trip. If you put this kind of input into your vision trip, coupled with the things we talked about in episodes 28 and 29, your vision trip is going to be phenomenal. And remember, it's not just about a vision trip, it's about your life, moving your life forward. That's about all the time we have right now. Our time is up. These episodes are short on purpose. Listen, if what I've said has encouraged you, you're going to really benefit from becoming an official member of the Courageous Nation. It's free, and yet it's priceless. You get motivational, inspirational texts from me during your week. I'll never spam you, I promise. Just text me at 917-724-0964. We'll put the number up on the screen, 917-724-0964. Just say, hi, Mike. I'll respond back to you. That's all it takes. And you know what else I'm going to do? This is a legacy blueprint. This comes in a beautiful slipcase, and it's a journal, but it's more than a journal. It walks you through the specific kinds of questions that I'm talking about right now in regard to a vision trip. And this is what's going to take your life to the next level. And I want to give you 30% off as long as we have these. I'll give you 30% off. Just go to the Courage Matters store. Go to CourageMatters.com. Get a legacy blueprint. It's our life planner. You can't miss it. It's right at the top when you go to the store. And in your shopping cart, type in Give Me 30. No spaces and the number 30. We'll put that up on the screen. Give Me 30. You'll get 30% off as long as we have a supply. And these come with lifetime videos too. So it comes with teaching videos to help you unleash your potential and reach your greatest potential. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I love helping people. I would love to help you. So if what I said today makes sense to you and fires you up and encourages you, you will love the Legacy Blueprint, right? Go get your Legacy Blueprint, your life planner. This will help you set and achieve great goals for the next 3, 5, 10, and beyond years for the rest of your life. And this is a great gift to give somebody to, and at 30% off with the free videos and everything, you're going to absolutely love it. Don't forget to text me. Join the Courageous Nation. You'll get those inspirational texts from me. And I look forward to seeing you in episode 31 the next time together, okay? So, in the meantime, this is Michael Anthony reminding you to keep looking up. There's no place else worth looking, and keep moving forward.